So the Pixel 7 Pro has been crowned the best smartphone camera overall, not just in our tests, but in general. Yeah, it's been really well praised. It takes great photos all the time, the HDR processing is just incredible, the video quality is very good, and the zoom is very impressive as well. So the question is, will the Pixel 7 Pro keep its crown, or will it be dethroned by the S23 Ultra? Well, we have 35 tests to find out. Everything from outdoor shots to indoor to zoom, macro, night mode, astrophotography, ultrawide, moonshot, video, action mode, raw, and so much more. So in terms of our first outdoor shot, the sun was to the right, so this was a pretty difficult to expose image, and Samsung did better here. The image is better exposed, we get a greater variety of colors, and I just love the way the sky looks in Samsung's shots. Interesting enough, the Pixel is sharper if you zoom in, and it's also more contrasty, but I definitely do prefer the vibe that Samsung has here. And now we have the second outdoor shot, and this is a very difficult one to expose. We have the shadows under the building and then the bright sky behind it, and both did perfectly. In fact, I'm surprised by how similar these photos look. I couldn't really find any major difference between the two here. And we have one last outdoor shot. This was shot directly towards the sun as it was setting, and the Pixel did manage to expose the image better. We have more shadow detail, but at the expense of noise. Now, if you zoom into the trees in the middle, you'll see that the Pixel was also sharper. So in terms of outdoor shots, I'm gonna call this one a tie. So what about indoor shots? Well, in this first one, Samsung did better. The sofa is sharper, the texture is more defined, the plants at the top are also brighter and sharper, and the image has just more pop on the Samsung. In the second indoor shot, pretty much the same thing. Samsung is once again sharper. If you look at those tiny plants, the text on the Nothing ear sticks is almost readable on the Samsung. The image is once again noticeably brighter and more vibrant. So yeah, if you do a lot of indoor shots, then Samsung is the better choice here. So what about zoom? Samsung uses a 3x as well as a 10x optical zoom module, both being 10 megapixels, whereas the Pixel has a single 5x 48 megapixel zoom lens. Well, to be honest, the Pixel handled the exposure much better, even though it was low resolution, as it used the main sensor and then cropped in 3 times digitally. Now, when it comes to the 10x zoom, this was surprisingly very good on both. In fact, the S23 Ultra over-sharpened it too much in post. The Pixel looks more natural and more like optical zoom, so I do actually prefer the Pixel here. And then we did one more zoom shot. This was at 30x, so this would be digital zoom. And yeah, the Pixel just cannot compete, as Samsung also uses the data from that large 200 megapixel sensor. So if you care about zoom, then of course Samsung is the better choice, especially with dual optical zoom modules. However, the Pixel is also very good if you take shots at 5x or 10x. So let's move on to the portrait mode shots. Once again, we have our model Ren at Diva Shiba Ren. And this was taken with a 3x module on the Samsung. However, on the Pixel, we don't really have that option. We only have the main lens, and then the Pixel zooms in twice digitally. So yeah, the quality, as you can probably tell, just doesn't compare. The Pixel looks very low res with almost no background blur. So yeah, this is a night and day difference. Same thing when it comes to our portrait mode person test. Gigantic difference in quality. Samsung looks like a DSLR shot. It's so good. It does have some very small errors if you take a look at the leaves, which were in focus where they really shouldn't have been. But other than that, Samsung took a perfect shot. So if you do loads of portrait mode shots, then Samsung is a significantly better choice here. So what about the ultrawide? Do we get any differences here? Well, they both use 12 megapixel sensors, and they both have an f2.2 aperture, but Samsung has a slightly larger sensor here. So let's see if that would make any difference. And I gotta say, both look very good here. Now, when you zoom in, you'll see that the quality is almost identical, so I guess it's just a matter of preference. Do you prefer the more vibrant colors on the S23 Ultra or the more natural ones on the Pixel? Personally, I prefer the ones on the S23. And same thing here when it comes to our second ultrawide shot. Yeah, the biggest difference is just the colors and the highlights, which were a bit better exposed on the S23, and I should also mention the field of view, which is just slightly wider on the S23 Ultra. And just one last ultra-wide shot, this is indoors now, and yeah, Samsung is sharper if you take a look at the plants on the left. The sky is also a bit better exposed on the Samsung, the plant on the table is sharper, and the background is sharper as well. So if you take a lot of ultra-wide shots, then you would see a bit better results on the S23, although not by that much compared to the Pixel. Let me also compare the macros. Now, the thing about the Pixel is that it can't really focus that up close. So we had to take this shot from further away. And you can probably tell that thanks to that, we don't really have as much focus drop-off as on the Samsung, but once you zoom in, you'll see that the details are way more visible on the Samsung. So if you care about macro photography, then the S23 Ultra is the way to go here. And then we also compared the raw performance. So we took a 50 megapixel raw photo on the Samsung, which is the highest that it can take, and then a 12 megapixel on the Pixel, which again is the highest that the Pixel can take. So I've edited both to recover as much detail as I could while also getting a pleasant looking image. And I gotta say, the Samsung definitely had a better dynamic range, as the shadows started breaking apart once I raised them, even just a bit, on the Pixel, as you can probably tell. Not only that, but the Pixel had this weird color artifacting at the top of the building. So yeah, there was actually a massive difference between the two, not just in terms of this, but also in terms of the resolution. Just look at how much sharper the Samsung is. So if you're a more pro user and you want to take raw photos and you also want to edit those, then of course the Samsung is the better choice here. Moving on to our high resolution test, the Pixel has a 50 megapixel module, but it is hardware binned to 12 megapixels. So the highest resolution we can take from this is 12. On the S23 Ultra, we have a 200 megapixel module, and you can actually take 200 megapixel photos with this. And when you zoom in and you compare the two, well, it just doesn't even compare. You get a ridiculous amount of detail on the S23 Ultra compared to the Pixel. And I gotta say, the file sizes are also interesting. The Pixel's image is only 2 megabytes in size, and the Samsung's is not 16 times larger as it should be, but only 8 times larger at 15.5 megabytes. But at the same time, you also get a significant amount of detail. So obviously, if you want to take loads of high resolution shots and then zoom in afterwards, well, it doesn't even compare. Samsung easily takes this one. Moving on to 4K 60 video, I do actually like the Pixel more here, as the colors look more natural. Samsung has this very washed out look, and Samsung is also overly sharpened here. The Pixel footage simply looks more pleasant. Oh, and one big upside to the Pixel is that you can actually switch between all lenses while recording 4K 60 video. On the Samsung, you can only do that in 4K 30. Now, Samsung can also do 8K 30, which, as you can probably tell, is significantly sharper when compared to the Pixel's 4K. But mostly when you zoom in. Other than that, it's quite hard to tell the difference in motion. Now, when it comes to ultrawide video, I gotta admit, I'm not a fan of either of them here. And that's because the Pixel has this very green tint, but a better exposed image, whereas the Samsung has an overly underexposed image as the shadow detail is lost. So yeah, Samsung is sharper, but because of the better exposed image, I do prefer the Pixel here. And then we also tested action mode. The Pixel can do 1080p 30 compared to 1440p 60 on the Samsung, so very big difference here. Not only that, but Samsung's footage was more stable. The tracking was better as the Pixel lost it at some point, and yeah, I mean, Samsung just has a better action mode. We then tested portrait mode video. The Pixel maxes out at 1080p 24 compared to 4K 30 on the Samsung, so we have another big difference in resolution and frame rate here again. And this was so much better on the Samsung. The Pixel kept cutting my nose out, and the blur also kept moving. Yeah, really bad portrait video on the Pixel. So in terms of video overall, if you only care about the general video quality, then the Pixel is actually better, as you get better exposure and you can also use all lenses in 4K 60. But if you only care about the extra features, action mode, portrait, 8K and stuff like that, then Samsung is better. So I'm gonna call this one a tie. So let's move on to nighttime photos. And here we have an evening shot, so the sun was just setting. They didn't really use night mode, this was set to auto on both, and Samsung looks almost the same as I saw it in person. The Pixel raised the shadows quite a lot to recover the detail, so the image is just not as realistic, as impactful as it was in real life. In terms of actual night mode, here the Pixel is better. If you zoom into the round building, you'll see that the windows are better exposed on the Pixel, and same goes for some of the other buildings. The Pixel also has a more contrasty look and more similar to how this looked to my eye when I took it. The Samsung, on the other hand, is just way too bright. At the same time, in the second night mode shot, Samsung did better. The brickwork texture is sharper. If you zoom into the distance, you'll see that the buildings are also sharper, and if you take a look at the trees in the middle, they are noticeably sharper on the Samsung. Now, when it comes to astrophotography, the Pixel did better here. Even though it had some serious trouble focusing at first, and I had to focus on the roof, the photo ended up being sharper. The stars are clear, and you can also see more of them as the Pixel shows a much longer exposure than the Samsung. We also took a photo of the moon, and I gotta say, Google had a good attempt, but just take a look at how much better Samsung did. It's like using a telescope. You get some incredible zoom, some incredible detail, which no, it is not AI generated, by the way. That was just a Huawei controversy. These were actual photos taken by the S23 Ultra. Now, when it comes to the 3x module with night mode, I gotta say, it's not too bad on the Pixel, considering that it was using the the main module and then zooming in digitally. But yeah, as you can probably tell, Samsung did much better here. Mostly because of image processing, not necessarily the clarity. We have less noise and a darker sky on the Samsung. When it comes to 10x zoom with night mode, another big difference. Super detailed on the Samsung. Obviously that 10x optical zoom module is just outstanding. Even with night mode, the Pixel is significantly worse here. And of course, we also tested the Ultrawide module with night mode, and the difference was very noticeable here. Samsung was sharper if you take a look at EpidemicSound on the left, the highlight is better preserved, the colors are more vibrant as the Pixels were just very washed out. Then we also tested the night portrait, using the main module on both, and here, I do really love the background blur on the S23 Ultra. It kind of gives me a DSLR vibe. The quality was also very good on the Pixel. This is because it wasn't using that 2x digital zoom anymore. But the colors were just way too vibrant on both. So I do actually prefer the S23 Ultra here because of the background, but I just don't like the colors on either of them. And when it comes to night video, Samsung is better here. The Pixel just has way too much noise. Samsung's footage is much cleaner. However, the Pixel does have better highlight retention if you take a look at the windows inside the buildings. But yeah, overall, Samsung definitely did better here. So in terms of night mode in general, yes, the Pixel can occasionally take a better night mode photo, but if you consider everything, zoom, night mode, ultrawide, astrophotography, basically everything, then the S23 Ultra is a better device for night photos. So what about the front-facing camera? So we have a 10.8 megapixel sensor on the Pixel and a 12 megapixel sensor on the S23 Ultra, both having an aperture of f2.2. And here the Pixel is underexposed, while the Samsung is overexposed. Now, Samsung is noticeably more detailed if you take a look at my face and my hair, so I do prefer the S23 here. Next up, we have front video, 4K 60, as well as a mic test, so I'll let you guys watch this one first. Okay, this is a front-facing video test of the S23 Ultra and the Pixel 7 Pro. This is both 4K 60, so let me know which one looks better and also which one sounds better. Take a look at the highlight processing. Samsung said that they've improved the HDR processing on the S23 Ultra, so yeah, let me know, what do you guys think? So the Pixel had a wider field of view and the highlights were not as blown out in some areas of the image. The clouds were more visible. But the Samsung was noticeably sharper, and for the most part the exposure was just fine, so Samsung, overall, they do better here. Now, when it comes to front portrait mode, this is significantly better on the Samsung. The edge separation on my hair is just perfect on the S23 compared to the Pixel. We also have that wider angle. The colors are better, and the image is way sharper in general. If you take a look at my hair, my face, as well as my coat. Moving on to the front-facing camera using night mode, I've actually used the zoomed out view on both of these, and the Pixel was indeed wider here. So you can get more into the shot on the Pixel if you simply use the 0.7x view on the front camera. In terms of the quality, Samsung is indeed better. It's much sharper, it's also brighter. I just wouldn't use the Pixel photo at all. So as a conclusion for the front-facing camera, if you are a selfies taker, then definitely go with the S23 Ultra. All in all, yes, the S23 Ultra dethrones the Pixel as the camera king of 2023, at least so far. I just love using this phone, and you also get a ton of functionality options. For example, the Expert RAW app, which allows you to fine-tune your photos significantly. You just don't have that with the Pixel. I do think that a Pixel is great for everyday shots, especially considering its price. $1,200 compared to just $600, which is what a regular Pixel 7 costs, which, yes, does have the same camera as the Pixel 7 Pro. Feel free to check out our previous camera comparisons against the S22 Ultra and the iPhone 14 Pro as well, and also check out the YouTube shoppable cards down below with some great deals on the S23 lineup and also the Pixel 7 and the Pixel 7 Pro. I'm Daniel, this has been ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.